and welcome to Rochelle Rogers, a YouTube channel where we take topics in the news, celebrity or otherwise, and we discuss them through various views. Now, the topic I would like to discuss today is that of the citizens of Chicago and its migrant population. So the citizens of Chicago are extremely upset about the way the city is handling its migrant population. Now, these migrants are primarily from Venezuela, and they are not being handled appropriately according to the citizens. Now, Chicago was declared a sanctuary city in 1985 under then Mayor Harold Washington, who issued an executive order to do so. Now, the order became law in 2006. A sanctuary city is basically a place where undocumented individuals can come and have a safe place to go. They can access city services and they don't have to worry about being deported because the immigration laws are not required to be enforced. Now, the only way they have to worry about being deported is if they commit a crime. But other than that, it's a safe place for them. They can access resources the same as if they were an American citizen or a city of whatever sanctuary city they are in. Now, since August of 2022, more than 42,000 migrants have been bused to Chicago from Texas, which is also a sanctuary city. And I'm assuming Texas has reached its capacity, and now they are spreading the love, right? They are asking these other sanctuary cities in the country to help because they are full. Now, these migrants have been relocated in areas of Chicago that don't have the space or resources really to sustain such a large influx of technically homeless people. Now, most of the neighborhoods where the migrants were sent to are middle to lower class neighborhoods. And some of these neighborhoods include Brighton Park, South Shore, Woodlawn area, Adamson area, the Dearborn Park community, and the Hyde Park community, just to name a few. And the residents, they're upset primarily due to all the money and resources that the city is using on the immigrants. Now, in the beginning, the city gave $9,000 each in rental assistance to the migrants so that way they could lease an apartment, pay bills, and live a halfway decent life, right? So I would assume that that may have been the beginning of the outrage from the actual citizens, right? Because if you find something like that out and I've been here struggling, they're going to come over here, you're going to give them $9,000 a month. Yeah, I'm going to feel a way too. But collectively, the city has spent $160 million in housing funding, $70 million for health care. And before they just started spending all this money, they said that they had a budget deficit of $538 million for 2024. So there you go. Now, the locals, they don't have a problem with helping the immigrants. They say their issue is not with the immigrants. They understand that they need help. They came to seek refuge, and they do not have a problem with that. Their problem is that the city of Chicago has not invested in these communities that they have sent these immigrants to, present day or historically. And when these communities requested funding to improve their community, requested resources for their community, they were either told that the money was not there, or they were brushed off, or just straight out ignored. And so that's their their thing. That's why they're upset. It's like we've been asking for help for years, decades, okay? Probably centuries if you want to get down to it. And now all of a sudden y'all got millions and millions of dollars to throw at, these people that ain't even from here, okay? Now, the South Shore neighborhood, that was among the first neighborhoods to bring forth a lawsuit against the city and the Democratic mayor, Brandon Johnson, and the Chicago Public Schools. Now, the reason why they added the public schools was because the city is using many empty public school buildings as shelters for the migrants. And one of the first schools they tried to use was the South Shore High School. Now, and that's what their lawsuit wanted to do. They wanted to stop the city from using the former South Shore High School as being a shelter for the immigrants. And this was because when the city first shut down the high school, the citizens of that community, they fought to have it stay as a high school, as a neighborhood high school. That was to no avail, and they shut the school down anyway. And so a lot of the residents that had to start driving their kids 15, 20 miles out the way to go to school, those that might have a bus or have to use public transportation, they have to travel so far out the way just to go to school. And you tell us, no, we can't use the building, but now all of a sudden you can use it to house immigrants, okay? And so that's what their lawsuit sought to do. Now, once all the public empty school buildings were used, like I said, first they gave them the $9,000 a month to find apartments. Once that filled to capacity, then they moved over to using the empty public school buildings. Now, my question is, why do you have so many empty public school buildings? I don't know. I'm sure that's a topic that we can deep dive into as well. But once all the public school buildings filled to capacity, they didn't have any more of them to use. They started using public parks as emergency shelters and creating tent cities in the parks. They've used parks like Gage Park, Broadway Armory Park, Brands Park, and like I said, that's just to name a few. And the citizens of these communities, they are complaining because crime is increasing. The police are not responding in a timely manner. And they have even issued a rule to now that if any calls are made for the police between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., they will not answer. So if anything happens from 3A to 7A, hope you can handle it yourself until the police station opens back up. Because guess what? They're closed for those 4 hours. Now, the migrants, like I said, all the parks that they're going to use are full to capacity. The migrants, they are sleeping in police station floors. Even at one police station, a chickenpox outbreak happened. And all the police officers caught chickenpox. All the people that was in there, everybody catching chickenpox, okay? And so I don't know, all the money they spent on the health care, I mean, are y'all giving these people, physical exams, you know what I mean? Just general exams, or are you making sure that they're healthy, before you just crowd a bunch of people up in one space? So they're using the police stations. They are using on the sidewalks, parks. They're even using the O'Hare International Airport for these people to sleep in. And of course, they're sleeping on floors, makeshift beds and cots and that sorts of things. And the residents are saying, they're advocating for these immigrants. They are saying that these immigrants need appropriate housing, that they should not be sleeping on the floors of the sidewalks and of the parks and of the police stations and of the airports, okay? Now, since the South Shore's lawsuit, several other communities have filed lawsuits against the city and the mayor as well. And one lawsuit demanded an audit, all right? But before we get to that real quick, I just want to mention the fact that that what I thought was interesting was it was a community of former migrants that they're also upset because they're being sent to their communities as well. And like I said, once again, they have the same sentiments as the prior communities. But their thing is, in their town hall meeting, they talked about how when they came over to the United States and took Chicago as immigrants, nobody gave them $9,000 a month. Nobody threw all these millions and millions of dollars at them when they came over here trying to make it and trying to seek refuge. They had to get it out the mud. And now they're saying, you know, these new immigrants are coming over and y'all giving them everything on a silver platter. And here we are, some of us are still trying to get a pathway to citizenship after being here 15, 20, 30 years. Some of us are still trying to get driver's license and work permits after being here 20 plus years. And then here they come and y'all just, you know, it appears as though y'all just giving them any and everything and they don't have to do anything for it when we had to bust our backs in order to get to where we are now. So, like I said, it's kind of the same sentiment with all these communities with a little, you know, added issue here or there depending on where you're standing or, you know, or what perspective you're coming from, right? Now, so, like I said, there are about 7 to 8 more lawsuits against the city from other communities. And the one community, they demanded an audit with their lawsuit. And the audit showed that as of June 17th, 2024, the city's migrant spending was $400 million. And most of that money was spent on a private company out of Kansas called Favorite Healthcare Staffing. And what they did was they staffed the migrant shelters. And then $76 million went to a company out of Louisville, Kentucky called Equitable Social Solutions. And their mission is to eliminate housing barriers that lead to housing instability, okay? Now, 30 million of that 76 million was taxpayers' dollars, and the remaining $71 million was unaccounted for. So only $329 million was accounted for in that audit, but they said they spent $400 million. So where's the rest of the money? I'm sure we could all take a good guess. But anyway, the city has not responded to any of the lawsuits. A law department spokesperson said that the city doesn't comment on pending litigations, and so that's why they have not responded. Many of the citizens are blaming the Democratic Party, and they are threatening to start voting Republican, and they are threatening to flip the state red. Now, I'm assuming maybe that threat, you know, sparked the fire under some people, because as of today, there have been reports of approximately 1,000 migrants have been evicted or forced out of the taxpayer-funded shelters just this month. And as of this week, the city of Chicago, they have implemented a 60-day limit on housing. So they have imposed a 2-month cap on stays at these homeless shelters across the city. And many of these migrants have lived there for months and months and months. And now all of a sudden, they've got 2 months to figure something out, or I guess go find you a tent and find a park somewhere, right? Now, a lot of the migrants are unable to find jobs legally because they are not getting any work permits. so that way they can work and try to afford housing. Now, some of the migrants, they have received work permits within about 6 months after initiating the asylum process, but many others have not. And actually, 625 of the migrants that were evicted, out of the 1,000 migrants that were evicted, 625, they have returned to the city's migrant headquarters in order to ask for new assistance with housing, and pretty much all of them have been readmitted into the shelter system. So last week, the city council's Latino caucus, they asked Mayor Brandon Johnson to halt the 60-day cap on the shelter for migrants and basically get rid of the limit, get rid of the cap, so that way the migrants will have as much time as they need in order to, quote unquote, get on their feet. Now, what I'm saying is, if it takes roughly 6 months to get your work permit and, you know, try to find a job and that sort of thing, then why wouldn't they just make the cap 6 months? I mean, why would you make the cap 2 months when it shows that most of the migrants that got work permits did it within 6 months? Make the cap 6 months, okay? That's number one. Number two, apparently you don't have enough housing, because in the beginning you were giving them basically vouchers, $9,000 a month in vouchers for their leases and their rental expenses and their housing expenses. And then apparently that capped out, because if it hadn't, you wouldn't have had to start overflowing into the public school buildings that weren't being used. And then you wouldn't have had to overflow into the parks and in the airports and on the sides of the street. So apparently there aren't enough housing units to house all these people. Now, what I'm saying is, my personal suggestion would be build up some projects the same way 100 million years ago, when black people all across America were homeowners, and y'all bought up all these people's houses and property, and you built up all these projects across the country and put them in the projects. Do the same thing for the immigrants. Build up some housing projects for these immigrants. And I'm sure you could have that done within 6 months. As fast as they pop these houses and complexes up, that they pop up quick. You know what I mean? It doesn't take them long to finish a housing complex or even a house. They build them so fast, they could have a whole complex built within 6 months. And all this money that y'all have spent already, y'all could have probably built up 2, 3, 4 apartment complexes or housing developments or projects, whatever label you want to put on it, in order to house these immigrants, right? And then maybe put some things in place, you know, rent-free, light-free, everything free for X amount of time, you know, give you time enough to get yourself together. And, I mean, and you can stay and live there if you want, or if you want to move or do whatever you want to do whatever you want to do. So, I mean, that would be my suggestion. Now, I would be curious as to what anybody else's suggestion would be, but these people have to live somewhere. I mean, we can't just not ignore the fact that you have people in your city that need housing and their basic day-to-day needs need to be met. So you have to address it. It's just how to address it. So that's my suggestion. Feel free to comment if you have a suggestion. Hell, feel free to call the city of Chicago. I'm sure they take some suggestions right about now, right? But that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And share the video. Talk about the video. Tell people to come to my channel. And hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I truly do appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening, taking the time, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.